Welcome to Tutor Boot, where each week I'm joined by thought leaders to talk about news related to the world of work. We toot what we like and boot what we don't like. I'm your host, Stacey Nordwall, and I'm a world of work nerd with about 20 years experience in HR and ops, mostly building people functions from the ground up at early stage tech companies. I am joined today by Kat Kibben and Ryan May McAvoy. Welcome, Kat and Ryan May. I would love to have Kat, can you start off by telling folks a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Kat Kibben. My pronouns are they, them. And I run a company called 3 Ears Media, named after two dogs with 4 ears. And we do recruitment process consulting. That's kind of the primary piece. And the way I think of it is we take the process that you're embarrassed by, the details that you haven't figured out yet, and we make the communications more clear and the system actually work the way you expect it to.
Awesome. And Ryan May, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Ryan May. My pronouns are she, her, and I am an HR ops leader. I'm the vice president of people operations for Blackthorn.io. We are a SaaS company in 15 countries. We're a little bit outside the standard because we're a bootstrapped operation. So sometimes good, sometimes bad. I have kind of done it all. I've worked in veterinary, I've worked in ski areas. I am mostly known for kind of my hot takes laced with humor where I'm kind of calling out the BS on things. And it's not even intentional. It mostly just kind of falls out of my mouth. So I probably need Kat to I just need to send her every community can you just filter this for me because it's probably not landing.
Clarity
Well,
is.
on this show, no filters. So we're just gonna see what happens. I'm excited based on our our intro chat. I think we're gonna have a good time today. And I'm so grateful, as I said, I'm so grateful that you're joining. I'm excited to have this conversation with the both of you. I know both of you talk a lot about leadership, resilience, mental health, the employee experience, and more. So I'm excited to get your insights on today's topic, which is kind of generally that the employees are not okay. The idea for this episode all started because I felt like, over probably starting 5 years ago or so, but happening more frequently, I was seeing this version of people posting on LinkedIn, your employees are not okay. And this, because of some kind of event that happened. And it seemed like between layoffs, political chaos, AI anxiety, inflation, economic uncertainty, ICE videos, SNAP, war, genocide, increasing instability. It felt like, okay, is anyone okay anymore? Is not okay just the norm right now? Because if it's not just one event causing distress, if it's this sustained state of instability and flux, when do we move to a mindset of folks aren't okay? They might not be okay for a while. So, how do we lead from that standpoint? And how do we do that in a more systemic way? And this is something I've talked about before, particularly when it comes to resilience and grit, where I don't believe that folks can just grit their way through these things. I don't believe in focusing on individual solutions to what are largely systemic problems. So I invited and reached out to Kat and Ryan May to have this discussion, and then in the background started digging in a bit more for me to see what was being said on this topic. I found that Brene Brown was recently at Fortune's Most Powerful Women Summit and said, quote, people are emotionally dysregulated, distrustful, and disconnected, end quote, and that we're not neurologically wired for this level of consistent rapid change. I also found that based on research from Modern Health, nearly 80% of employees say they've sacrificed their mental health to meet work demands, and almost half say they do it every day. Um, Half also say that their company encourages self-care, but makes it almost impossible for them to actually practice it. Based on research from the APA, that's the American Psychological Association, 3 out of 4 employees say financial anxiety is harming their work performance. And then there is this impact of government policy changes. Nearly 40% of workers say they're worried that changes in government policies could cost them their jobs in the next year. Many believe if they lose their jobs, they won't bounce back easily from it. 2/3 say they think it will take them a long time to find new work, and more than half believe that they would have to start in a completely different field or industry. So, what do we need? Brene Brown says it's leaders with empathy, self awareness, nervous system regulation, an understanding of systems thinking, and those who can slow down to think through decisions and make sure they are aligned with strategy and values. To me, this does not feel like the model of leadership that I find most companies actually reward or promote. Uh, so today we're asking, what does it mean to lead, work, and stay human in a world where it seems like not being okay has become the baseline? And how do we build organizations and expectations that can hold that truth instead of pretending that things are normal right now? There's a very long preamble. So let's get into it. Let's start off with some toots and boots. When seeing these stats about the mental health of employees, about their fears about job security, was there anything that surfaced for either one of you that felt particularly toot-worthy or boot-worthy?
I'm a huge Brene Brown fan. I want to boot part of what she's saying though, because I think we put a lot of emphasis on the workplace. I'm a huge proponent of safe workplaces, caring about my people. I think there's a couple pieces of accountability though. Work shouldn't be your whole life. That's easier said than done for a lot of us. I also think that this is not just all of those amazing issues you listed. I think the constant flow of information, there's no disconnect. Things do change drastically. They've done that for centuries, but we're finding out in 15 seconds or less, and you're getting 17 alerts about it. And then somebody is texting you and sending you a TikTok. And this, it's more than one thing. So I think for her to be like, leaders need to fix it. I agree, but I don't think that's the magic wand. It's leaders need to fix this. And we, as like kind of a whole world, bring back putting the kids outside without the phones, like those kind of things. I think it's more of, again, love Brene Brown, not booting everything she says. I just think in this particular case, like to be like, it's a workplace thing. Probably, but not just a workplace thing.
Right. It's an oversimplification because of what you said, Stacey, which is we reward opposite behavior. So you listed out empathy, self-awareness, nervous system regulation. Has anyone ever seen a reward system or a promotion sheet that talked about how good people were at these or how they executed this? Like, it's not real. And I think the thing that I also boot about her perspective here is saying it's a workplace issue when work didn't prepare us for leadership. Our life prepares us for leadership. And I guess I believe deeply now that I've become the leader and also had to kind of course correct a lot of my toxic leadership traits that I earned from other toxic leaders, is that nothing changes about leadership if you don't change.
Mm-hmm.
So we can blame it on the workplace all we want. We can put it back on your values and not acting and whatever. No. It's you. It starts with you. And that's what plants the seed of a team that can actually execute on empathy and all of the other things that she says we need.
I would like to toot on everything Kat said.
Mm-hmm.
It's an accountability piece. And we were talking about this, Stacey, last time we connected. I don't bring my phone around to certain places because I need that space. Because even if my phone is on silent, if one of my VAPs is texting me, even just zzz, 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 it causes a reaction, whether it's a big reaction or small reaction, it's probably tied to other things, something I can control.
Yeah.
Something I have a piece of. And that's where I feel like everybody's saying, oh, Gen Z and stuff. If you're coming out in COVID times, you're a little bit feral. That's not entirely your fault. But we also need to be like, hey, like, I don't want to be the boomer or whatever, be like, back in our day. But like, there's a little bit of accountability that needs to happen. What can you do to kind of, I don't want to say protect your peace, but like, if you know this causes a reaction, is there an alternative? Is there a conversation? Can you advocate for yourself?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's kind of funny because before we started recording, we were talking, all of us, about how we have our phones off most of the time, or the ringers off, the notifications off, the sound off. And it is because of that. It's hard to ignore. It does kind of have a physical reaction, the same way, the Slack sound, you're like, ugh, like it immediately evokes something for someone who's familiar with that sound. And that's the thing of like some of it to what everyone's saying, that your own emotional regulation, which is also a part of leadership, of like having that own kind of self-awareness, that own sense of emotional regulation for things maybe as simple as our phones.
Hey, y'all, I'm Lee Cage Jr., and I'd like to invite you to listen into my podcast, 15 Minutes With. 15 minutes with rising stars and seasoned disruptors, thought leaders, and change agents who are sharing how they're reshaping work, rethinking worth, and reimagining what's possible. This is fast paced, heartfelt, and unfiltered. These aren't just conversations, they're catalysts. So tune in, elevate, share the shift. 15 minutes with wherever you get your podcast.
Yep. Well, and I think it goes all the way back to attention. I think we mislabel a lot. Everyone loves the word vulnerability, vulnerable leader, vulnerable this. But what that's code for is connection and attention. That's all it is. And our society, our hurry to answer, immediate value response, what I call like the EMS of emails, like it scares me a little when I get a response within 2 seconds of me sending an email. I'm like, that's usually a red flag for me with a leader when I start getting emails too quickly, because it means that you're not actually considering the response, which means we're not getting to the attention part. And that's kind of the foundation of trust, is that mutual piece. And our phones distract us from just being available. And that's kind of the core principle of leadership that we kind of skim over because we think that's obvious, and it's not in our society.
Interesting. The funny thing is, you made me think as you were talking about the number of times that I pick up my phone to do a certain thing, and then I see some other thing on my phone, a text, a notification, completely forget why I picked up my phone. And I can see that, and that happens. There are times when I think about, to your point about emails, that I reply to something and then later I'm like, wait, did I actually answer the question in full, or was I only half giving it my attention because I was doing 10 other things? So I think that is probably a whole other a whole other podcast. But I want to reorient to this idea of kind of the broader idea that we were talking about. Have we reached a point where we need to stop kind of treating it as though we're in a temporary crisis and start accepting that some level of not being okay is the new baseline for work and life, at least for the near term?
I think it's kind of unrealistic to believe that people aren't fundamentally different now than they were 5 years ago. And I think the second factor, and I wrote about this a little bit in my book because I don't think people really understand the scale of how layoffs have broadly impacted people. So if you look at just the US, we have over 10 million people, another million added this year, who all experience layoffs. Layoffs are code for work trauma. Okay. These are people traumatized by work, because I don't think there's a lighter phrase we can use for I walked into work one day and then my entire life changed. That's trauma. That's by definition, psychologically. And then you layer on the trauma that is the consequence of the uncertainty that they're experiencing. So, caregiving. So if I don't have reliable access to Medicaid, I'm going to be worried about the people that I'm caregiving for, or the older adults, because they are rapidly approaching senior years. And we were going to rely on that money to make sure that they had medical access and all of these layers. And so we have a traumatized workforce. Then you layer in some of the stats you opened up with, and some of the stats that are even grosser, like 97% of people experiencing toxic managers. So now we have a traumatized workforce living in a highly toxic society in which we are constantly being notified about bad things. If you think people are just marching around okay, I just, what? How?
Well, when you say it like that.
I think there's a layer to this too, like plus one to everything Kat said, but I also think we really like to sensationalize the bad. I really feel like every time I open up a LinkedIn post and it's your employees are not okay and you have to be okay with this because of this very specific event that you may or may not know about because you've learned to filter your algorithms, it definitely grabs the attention and raises an eyebrow. I don't, just as a whole, workplace life, universe wise, the good gets a lot less attention. I actually wrote about this on LinkedIn recently where I was like, if I say something good or somebody's like, hey, I got a job, I got promoted, I got all this, you'll see people be like, oh my God, I can't believe you would post that when 20,000 people got laid off. And you're like, well, one, I would hope that would be hope. It would be like a little bit of inspiration. And it would be, I really love the glimmers concept. And I don't know who to credit for that, but where you go through your day and you find the small things that just give you that moment of, and I think we don't focus on that. I think it's a lot of, I'm going to be the loudest one in the room saying how everything is on fire and the ship is sinking and we all have to get our shit together and figure it out right this second. And you better not misstep and offend anybody. That's heavy. That's heavy to weigh. And you add that with this like public, like, oh, I'm going to get the most clicks and the most likes and the most engagement off of this toxic post. Well, then you're just adding to the fire and you're keeping the cycle going.
Yeah.
And even there was the whole, oh, have women ruined the workplace? Everybody's like, well, here's the reasons why. And I was like, you know what I have? I've ruined the workplace. I've fought against toxic managers. I have ruined the notion that DEI doesn't exist. And I took it a step further. I was like, I also, ruined my husband's life because like now he's a wife and doesn't live in a bachelor pad. And I have ruined my own life by not being a mom, but I'm showing up for children who probably need a steady adult that isn't a parent. Like, oh my God, the horror. I think it's just a tone change as well. Everything is at 11 and it's very pointed and it's very angry. And that's hard. That's hard even in normal times. But if it's hard and then we're throwing gas on the fire, it's never going to get better.
You
Well,
just touched on something really, really important that I think is about like the future of work and all of that, which is I actually think HR leaders would benefit so much right now from recognizing that people are operating on fear, because that's what the algorithm does. The algorithm senses fear. Fear causes dopamine. Dopamine and cortisol and all of those reactions that happen inside of our body when we're scared and panicked for our life don't lead to better decision making. They don't lead to innovation. They don't improve performance and all of that. And I think it would just so benefit this. I hate using phrases like generation of leaders, but truly, like all of these people who are trying to figure out what they're supposed to be doing for people right now, knowing that they are fearful, knowing that I can't control the world. I can't control bad news and I can't control what your algorithm spits at you, but knowing how to build confidence on their team and knowing how to teach managers, leaders especially, how to navigate uncertainty with confidence.
mm. Yeah, and what I was going to say too builds on that is really the whole physiological arousal that you're talking about. That is exactly what social media has capitalized on, right? That is exactly what that they're tapping into with the algorithms is getting that reaction from people. And so I think there is something to this idea of, okay, as leaders, knowing this are there ways that we can help um, dampen that that physiological arousal. I don't know if dampen is the right word, but basically help to settle that so that it is not that people are kind of operating in that anxious, high level state all of the time. Um, but though this is where I also have I don't know how we battle this against, the idea of like resilience, right? Because we need people to be more self-aware. We need people to be resilient. But at what point is, like the stat of a company encourages self-care but makes it impossible to practice? Like we tell people to be resilient. Are we putting them in environments where they actually can be resilient within the workplace? So are workplace environments offering real relief to people, real, environments to people where they can kind of dampen the physiological arousal, or not? And if not, how can we kind of work to change that?
I want to say to a degree we are. You're seeing a lot of these tech HR companies kind of coming up with Modern Health's a great one, WellHub, the Peloton app. I know some people offer that as the program. Utilization is really low. So that's part of it is again, we're giving you the tools, you're not picking them up. I think is it as widespread and normal as it should be? No. But again, historically, how long ago could the three of us get credit cards without a cosigner that was a man? How long ago were we segregated at work? Change takes time. And I think, again, because it's instant gratification, everybody's like, well, now we have all these cool startups that support well being and you're not using it. So you're the problem. people might be afraid to use those things. They may not trust that, like, if you're going to into a well-being app and talking to a therapist via text or a video, that your employer's not getting that data. You can say it, you can repeat it, but you have to kind of be consistent with the conversation. We provide this. Here's how you utilize it. I personally, we have a well-being bundle at Blackthorn. I check the utilization. I try and have conversations. I also say, like, hey, here's how I use this personally, just so people know. With new hires on day one, we talk about our calendars being visible and stuff. I show, like, therapy, do not book over. I'm like, this is the only meeting that I will never ever change, do all of this, because I can't be a leader without that. And I am so blessed and so privileged and totally aware of both of those things that I can be loud and proud about. Like, I see a therapist. His name is Kevin. He is the reason that I am semi-functional adult in society and trying to channel my petty into a purpose moment most of the time, as discussed earlier. But the thing is, like, why is all of the onus on workplace? And I'm not trying to defend the position like, hey, we give you a paycheck and get out of here. There are programs, and most of leaders, granted, I curate a pretty solid network of leaders that I don't think are trash can humans, but most of them are using those. And there's idea sharing, like, hey, this is a free resource. Can we pass this on? Is it being communicated correctly? Probably not. Is it being spread out to your team enough? Are enough teams adopting it? Probably not. But consistency is going to be key in that, because it's, again, we're using cheesy adages, being the change you want to see.
Yeah, I mean, as you're saying that, it's obviously who we're surrounded by too, right? Because I also agree. I'm like, I know so many leaders and HR leaders who are doing these things, but on the flip side of that, I also see the things where people use that utilization or use the well-being surveys to fire people, to lay them off, and people hear that as well. So I think there is still that aspect of, there's a lack of trust because I feel like the leaders that we know are probably in the minority, and that's not the experience that a lot of employees are having, unfortunately. So, Kat, I know I think you wanted to say something on this as
No,
well.
no, of course I do. I know I toot to both of what you're saying. I think the communication part, Ryan May, that you mentioned about like we do not consistently communicate how and why and when to use things. It's the things like saying, hey, you have too much PTO and it's November, right? That's a simple example that just doesn't happen broadly. And, because I'm a nerd and a lot of my job is researching what good means, right? Because you can't build something better if you don't understand what good means. And I think what so I've been doing a lot of digging into how to build resilience, but I don't ask other HR professionals about how to build resilience. I go to psychiatrists who've written books on this. I go to the Adam Grants of the world and try to, because he can rattle off more research than anyone, right? Like he's the best. He's like Chat GPT for workplace trends. He can just like spit all of the stats at you and they're actually verified. But I think when we look at resilience, the foundation of why people aren't resilient has very little to do with our policies, and it has everything to do with what you said, Stacey, about putting work at the center of our lives, right? It's when we center work, what's happened over the last, I just listened to a podcast on this. And so what's interesting is we talk a lot about how work changed from the 60s to now, right? Like people had one job for their whole life in the 60s, and we just point at the trends, but we never talk about what actually changed. And what actually changed is work wasn't at the middle. So in the 60s and 70s, work was part of your life, but church, picnics, your neighborhood, all of those things were the center of your community. We had deep relationships that existed outside of work. You could make friends without going to an office. It's crazy. I wasn't there, but I hear great things, right? Now, fast forward, what we experience today is you can't make friends if you don't go to an office. It's really hard to make friends without going to work. I think about a lot of my friends I met at a workplace at one point in my career. Or I met them in college when I was getting ready to go to work. And when we center work in that way, it almost puts too much on. You know what I mean? Like if this were a teeter-totter and you're just trying to create balance in your life, if we put way too much into work, we lose too much. And I think that's where that resilience factor is draining out of people, is the fact that we put too much in and we don't get anything out because we have an entire society of people who feel used by work instead of valued.
Well, I think
To all of that.
yeah, I mean, I think also as you're talking, the thing that, this kind of layers into all of the conversations about workplace loyalty and all of these kinds of things is like, I think there was a different relationship from work to work, or we could have a different relationship to work if so many things weren't dependent on work, right? Like, I can't have my health insurance is dependent on work. My, for people, um, like parental leave is dependent on work. There are so many things that because we don't have them, we don't have that social safety net, we don't have that from a federal level, that more and more, and I think that's kind of, it's been a two-way street there where employees more and more so are focused on, I need to get that from work, and workplaces are like, oh well, we need to fill this gap for people, and we're trying more and more to be all of these things to everyone. And it makes me wonder too, like, okay, well, how do we shift this a bit? Because I agree that, yeah, I I moved to Phoenix 3 years ago. I have like one friend. It's impossible to make friends here, but there's no office that I'm going to. People did have communities, churches, met their kids' friends, parents, or all of these different things that don't really exist in the same ways anymore. We're a lot more isolated. So are there ways that we start shifting this idea of what work is within, I don't know, the US? Like, I feel like other countries don't have this level of reliance on work in the same way.
That was where I wanted to jump in. I think because we're talking like federal level and stuff. I am married to a Canadian. We are an international company, and parental leave is always the one where it's like, well, that must be nice for Europe, Canada, all of these amazing countries. And I'm like, okay, but they're also paying way more in taxes than we are. Like, there's a give and take. And I think it's really easy to be like, well, the grass is always greener. And we talk about this in leads and stuff. And the example I like to use in having that conversation and shifting the workplace, I'm not a parent. I have no plans to being a parent. I am the loudest, ready to die on the hill that parental leave is something that is broken and we need to fix it. And it's not your 12 weeks, 16 weeks, and then come back to work and pretend nothing happened, because you have uprooted your entire life to have a child, which thankfully somebody's doing it, because it's not me, and I am not tough enough to be a parent. Shout out to all of the parents, to you guys, because goodness gracious, after 5 days with my nephews, I'm like, I don't hear anything. It's quiet. There's nothing in this house right now. And I love those babies to the day I die. But goodness gracious, I know my limits. And I had someone ask me, well, why do you care about parental leave so much? One, because I'm smart enough to know it's not a 12-week vacation. Two, I know that this is the employees of the future, so we should probably give them the best start we can. And I also think we have to get out of this mentality of like, well, you get that, so what do I get? Well, you're getting to support the next generation of workers that hopefully are doing better things with Medicare and all of that when we're all of age. It's just looking at it from that lens. And on the flip side, acknowledging like, hey, we don't have a lot of control over the federal stuff right now. Here's how we're supplementing it. And this is what we can offer. And something we talked about, like with the workplace being all consuming, I talked about this with Heather a while ago. Work is a huge piece of it. Something when I really started, as I got closer to 40, I was really doing some self inventory, spent a lot of time with Kevin, the therapist, trying to expand my circle, doing all these things. And I kind of realized, like, I use the analogy of a brick wall. I need every piece of me to be a brick, because I could get laid off. I could get divorced. All these things could happen. The wall's going to wobble. It's going to be shaky. It may feel a little unsteady, but I never want one brick to be pulled out and the wall just to completely crumble and I have to rebuild my life. Is that resilience? Maybe. I've also had like plenty of adult and slash childhood trauma that, to me, I'm like, I'm trying to build resilience. I'm trying to build peace, knowing that that's not a forever situation. And when we talk about being real and being transparent in those things, especially in a people's thing, and I'm sure Kat sees this too, we get treated like robots. People are genuinely shocked when you're like, hey, I'm going wine tasting this weekend. I'm like, You drink? You live out?
Dare you
Yeah.
share your life?
Oh my, well, and like I used to joke when I was in office, I was like, do you guys think they just like roll me into the closet at 5 o'clock? Like I don't know what we're thinking here. Like I'm also a human being. These are things. And I during COVID really had to lean in on like advocating for myself because nobody knew what was going on. It wasn't anybody's fault, but we were in Santa Clara County, California, which was the strictest COVID county everywhere. And it was the inevitable mistake of like, oh, you guys, Ryan May's policies and this and all this. And then Gavin was at French Laundry. And I finally was like, you know what? Yes. And I went into Slack and I was like, yeah, well, I was at French Laundry with Gabby. We decided how to ruin everybody here's lives. These 37 individuals in this organization, we made that active decision. And it stunned everybody enough to be like, oh. And there was like a pause and it gave me a moment to be like, I got engaged Christmas 2019. I looked at my wedding venue the day the world shut down. Like, I'm not having fun either, guys. I'm trying to keep us safe, I'm trying to keep us open. We have our jobs. And it was those moments where I feel like sometimes you have to like shock factor into the conversation because as soon as I was like, yep, it's out here to ruin your life with my COVID policies, everybody's like, whoa, oh yeah, that doesn't make sense. I'm like, does it? Doesn't it? Isn't it crazy to think that I don't spend my evening hours like hatching a scheme on how to ruin lives? But we don't get that courtesy. And I think that's a problem too, is because leaders expect people to have all the answers. Well-being is an HR problem. Employee engagement is an HR problem. No, that's an everybody problem.
Yeah. Well, and I think two things are coming up for me. The first one is kind of heavy, and I'm gonna say it. Stacey, if you need to chop it out, go for it. But
Don't do it.
when
Never do.
when we look at work overtime, it's not a far leap to say that our current system of work could be called modern day slavery. We rely on these companies for our money, for wages that do not pay for what we need, and we still go because we are tied to them. We rely on them for the things that we need to live, and we are not given enough resources to freely make choices. When our healthcare, our childcare, our benefits, where we live, how much home we can have, how much money we have, when it depends where our kids go to school, I can keep going. It is a parallel. And I think we don't perpetuate those cycles, but we are the exception to modern day leadership, where we hover people's jobs over their head, where we threaten people with their livelihoods. I've been there. It's why I started my company, is because I had a manager threaten me in that way and say things to me that were absolutely unacceptable by any shape of anything. And I think what it rolls back to when we talk about the whole, like, it's an HR problem, and you were getting at this at the end, I believe, is like this idea that they blame HR for the problems that people are having when they work in a broken system. And we do not make choices to make people better. We make choices to make our business better, to make our business more profitable, and all of those things. And I think one thing, so I used to say this at the beginning of my pronoun sessions, and I actually took a step back recently and was like, you know what? This is actually all of my work and what I always want to do, which is, if we make people better at work, they go home and they be better people. And when they go out into that world and they're nicer to their kids and they're nicer to their siblings and they are kinder to their parents and their neighbor, that's what actually makes the world better and gets us one step towards the world, the society that we want to live in, not bottom line, I cut people and all of that. And
Well,
until leaders center that, I don't think it matters.
There's so much data that's tied to that. If you look at domestic violence stats, what careers? They are extremely high stress. Public servants have a huge rate of domestic violence, cheating on their spouses, having financial troubles.
Yep.
Military, we ask these families. I grew up in a military town. I grew up right outside of Colorado Springs. My brother-in-law is a 20 plus year Army veteran. And it is crazy the ask on these families. And then everybody is shocked, like, what do you mean there's a high divorce rate or domestic
50%.
violence rate? What are you talking about? We're sending people overseas, we're sending law enforcement into scenes no one should see, and you just get these cop-outs. Well, they choose to do it. Well, somebody has to do it. So instead of they choose to do it, how about I'm really grateful you are doing this. How can I support you so when you come home, it's not being taken out on your family and your neighborhood and your community? And we don't. We look at it. We're just now starting to talk about this. I was laughing about this with my brother-in-law a couple years ago. How the paternity leave has changed from the military. It used to be 10 days. They get 12 weeks now, and he's like, it's a retention problem. And I was like, I love that you guys are doing this. I hate that you're doing it because you just can't get butts in seats. Like, and then that leads to the factor, like, am I being negative by being like, you should be doing it for a better reason? Or should I look at like, okay, we're making changes. It's slow, but the boat is turning. Like, that's where, as leaders, like those conversations are so important.
So I want to kind of reorient the idea about leadership within the workplace. Brene Brown said people today are emotionally dysregulated, distrustful, and disconnected. And that leaders, everyone, no one is wired for this level of chaos. So what does it look like to lead, as a CEO, as a manager, as an HR leader, when everyone is kind of, this in this state of heightened arousal consistently and kind of generally running on empty?
I'm biased because I literally wrote a book about this.
Let's hear it.
So to
The
me,
softball question.
well, to me, it is building your own bounce back factor. That's what I call those muscles that you use when you're navigating uncertainty. And then it's reminding other people that those are available to them. And the best part for me is when I talk about these, people are always like, that's so simple. And I'm like, uh-huh. Because being decent to each other and navigating uncertainty is actually pretty easy when you get back to basics. So a couple off the top of my head, asking for help. I have to be reminded to ask for help because traditional corporate leadership is going to tell you that leadership is an independent activity, that the higher up you get, there's no one for you to ask for help, right? It's very lonely at the top. We've heard all of the idioms. And the reality is that leadership is a practice in reliability. It's learning how to rely on other people. It's learning how to activate and inspire them. And so asking for help, building that in as part of the process. We don't do anything without asking someone for a little bit of help and reminding your team when they're stuck, you should ask for help. Another one that people really like, and I've noticed their brains kind of click when I tell them, is like, you have to know when to quit.
Yeah.
Again, leadership, it talks about the completion rate, right? We only focus on what people accomplish, those finish lines, when in reality, great leadership tells people, hey, stop running into that wall, please. Do something different.
There's a great catchphrase from Andrew Bartlow, who runs the People Leader Accelerator. I did the cohort in the spring, and it's two toots and a salute. And he talks about you go in, you present this initiative, you have your data, it's all of this, and leadership's like, yeah, that's not great. You're going to bring it up one more time. You have your data, you have all this. Yeah, we don't want to do it. Okay, you tooted twice, you're going to salute. And then in 6 months, if there's a well-being issue or this, whatever, and you're like, oh, my solution would fix that. Okay, well, but you did what you asked. You gave it your all, because if you just constantly toot, 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 it's exhausting. And what are you missing spending all that energy on that when the next thing around the corner may be something big?
Well, and then HR becomes the fall guy, right? I read the stat this week from a Forrester report that I will not pay for because it costs over $700, which I just think is absolutely ridiculous. But the stat that one of their employees pulled out to feature and highlight is that 55% of HR professionals will be replaced by 2026. And then I just kind of giggled because, yeah, right. But I think
I do joke that AI could take parts of my job on the hard days. I'm like, come on, do it, baby. Like,
try.
Go enjoy. I'm so ready for that part of it.
I always tell people, I'm like, if you have cussed out a chat bot on an airline website, you know why this isn't going to happen. Okay.
Yeah.
And all of us have cussed out that chat bot on the website because you just asked one damn question and they don't understand the exact wording you use or all of these things. But I'm bringing up that stat because it is laughable, because who are you going to blame if we're not there?
Mm. So that I think that comes back to something I said at the top of the show where, Brene Brown kind of laid out this like this is the leader we need. And I feel like as HR folks, we're like, yeah, no shit. We said that. Right. Like right. We're like, yeah, we've been talking about empathy and emotional regulation. And we've been saying that these are the kinds of skills that the, quote unquote soft skills that leaders need. But it does not seem like that is the kind of leadership that is generally promoted, rewarded. That's not on the rubric, right? So, do we think organizations are ready for that kind of leadership or even actually really want that kind of leadership?
Think
Personally, I think that's the critical evolution that has to happen if you want to adopt AI, because
Hmm.
AI is going to do the grind and the people are going to do the connecting. The people are going to do the navigation. The people are going to do the reconciliation of the information. And if I'm leading an HR team right now, that's the message that I'm giving to the leadership is, okay, I know that's how we were both raised, right? In this corporate America, we got our training from all of our managers, and we were always told that that's what drives success. But the reality is that the purpose of machines are that they can run faster in directions that we can't consistently execute. But now we have to consistently execute the processing of that information. And I think that boils down to one step higher level, which is deeply understanding what humans are good at and what machines are really good at, and starting to build acceleration around that. And that would be the angle I would be having, not like everybody's traumatized and crying at their desk. Now what? Can you give me an extra PTO day at the
we're
end of the
having a
year?
pizza party, y'all.
Thank you.
Uh, no, I think it's the same thing though with HR leaders. And I don't think this is unique to HR leaders. Any of us goes and asks our leader, like, hey, what is my job? Especially with people, they're gonna be like, I don't know. Or they're gonna say, like, you order the pizzas. So really, I think it's step one defining, like, what are your pillars? I can tell you, like, these are the four things that are kind of life or death in my role. And if those are being done, okay, like the boat is not sinking. Do the decks need to be swapped? Is there other issues? Probably. But if that gives me a foundational, it also gives me room to be human. Because I can say, like, I was like with my CEO last week and he said something and I was like, look, I slept like shit last night and probably shouldn't even be answering him on this right now because I just don't feel in the right headspace. We have a relationship. Again, that is a privilege. That is not the norm for everyone. I am wildly aware of that. And I never want to be like, I just have it great and everything, guys. But I also have a very big mouth and I advocate and I talk. And to this day, everyone asks what the hardest part of our jobs are. It's the humans, they're the unpredictable element. And this whole AI and chat, I use the example of tone and text and intention. I can go send 10 Slacks right now. Hey, good morning. 10 people are going to read that 10 different ways. No bot is going to interpret, well, John read it as this and Jane read it as that. And maybe Jane's having a really hard day. And so she thinks you're mad at her or she has that layoff here or any of those. That's where we as leaders have to cultivate those skills. Yes, I would like the bot to run me a report and be like, Jane didn't open her message for 4 hours. Because then is she busy on something? Okay, she's not. Something going on where like, oh, Ryan May's name is invoking fear because she thinks she's in trouble or something. Because then I'm going to make an extra effort. But that's where those skills working with the machines is helpful. I argue with she who shall not be named all the time because we have a full smart home. I'm married to a software engineer. And it's easy to forget. Like, I could just flip the light switch. I don't need to sit there and yell at her for 10 minutes. I can just be like, boop, done. But I'm so used to it now that I forget. And that's where with humans, that's not possible. You can't forget the side. We're still going to have feelings. There's not a chip or an AI that's like from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., you are steady state, laser focused on that. And the world does not exist outside of that. I'm sure some weird overloader is trying to invent that. Thankfully, it's not the reality. And that's where, as leaders and humans, we have to focus. And it's not just a people thing. One of my most successful relationships with our finance guy was like, what are the 5 things I need to know about your role? I'm never going to know how to fix the EBITDA or like if it's good or bad, but I know what the EBITDA is because you really stress that's important to me and I need to pay attention to it. Having those conversations with every single leader across the board is helpful and having it with your CEO, like what is your expectation of my job? Because if I'm being set up to fail, I want to know ahead of time. And if you don't know what your expectation is, that's a big problem we got to fix.
It goes back to the what does good mean? Because if we don't know what good means, we can't create it. And that's process, that's people, that's culture, values, all of it.
And
Yeah, that's
layering the different sides of us. Awesome, has regular. You want to talk to your wife or HR? Because I can answer in two completely different ways on which hat you want me to wear.
hmm. So as we wrap up, I want to, we've covered a lot of different things about, well, what kind of lies within, individual responsibilities, leadership responsibilities, uh, cr the workplace environment. What what do you think for the current situation that we're in? What does kind of a working in a healthy version of work in this current reality look like?
For me, I think it's acknowledgement and inclusion. And when I say like shit sucks, the first to say it, I'll shout it from the rooftops. I'm not going to let that define everything. I'm also going to include like, hey, this really good thing happened and this great thing happened or this exciting thing happened. And we're just being I think we need a balance of that instead of it just being the shock factor. I feel like LinkedIn is like the Perez Hilton of the early 2000s of just like all the like, oh my God, scandal. Yeah, it's really exciting to read, but it's not good for you mentally and it just gets to be exhausting. And so if you're talking all the doom and gloom, find a counterpoint. For every down counterpoint, find a good. Balance it. Continually remind people like, hey, we're running at 90. That's not great. We hate it. We're trying to change it. Here's 5 seconds of a cat video or some funny anecdotal thing that's going to take you to an 85. That's not the solution, but if you continue the habit on that, it's going to help.
Yeah. I think the thing I've noticed with my team is asking a lot of questions and not assigning meaning myself because I know how I feel about it, but I don't know how they feel about it. And I can just ask so many questions until they're borderline annoyed with me, but understanding what they care about, like you said, Ryan May, but also what they care about in their real life, what they're doing that has nothing to do with work and being deeply connected, I think is a big part of it. I think the other side of it is if we want to be better leaders, we have to stop looking back. And I think we have to, and this builds off of what you're saying, so toot toot, is surrounding ourselves with optimists. I have spent many, many years in this industry, and I would not say that for the first half of my time writing and reflecting on recruiting that I was an optimist in any way, shape, or form. But over the last year, I've really been intentional about seeking out people with optimistic impressions about what's next and allowing myself to dream a little bit about what could be instead of getting stuck in the belief that nothing could ever change. And I think if leadership is going to evolve, if we want to be part of that evolution, we have to be willing to believe it'll change first.
Mm. 1,000,000%. And I like an example, Stacey, we were talking about that event where it was kind of a tire fire. I'm not going to throw shade or call out names. That is still a core HR heartwarming moment because we all just laughed the whole day and had such a fun time. It would have been so easy to be like, oh my God, this was a disaster and it was terrible. There was a lot that was wrong with it. There was shady stuff happening. It was the whole thing. If we had an hour-long episode about that, yes, we would talk about that. But as a whole, I would still be like one of my top 5 memories of just being with amazing people, just having the most fun day. Did I learn anything? Maybe not anything life-changing, but I had such good connection that it's like every time I have a smile and a warm in my heart if it's like a moment I'm thinking about.
Mm.
Find those. It's easy to say everything is wrong. It's easy to say everything is bad. And that's something that my therapist and now my executive coach have said is like the old adage of like, what went right today? One thing. Just find one thing in your day that went right today. For
And
some reason, this
remember,
house, it's the cat didn't barf on the floor.
well, I heard
That
this
went right,
last
and I'm
week,
grateful
and
for it.
yeah, well, and innovation requires speculation,
Mm.
right? We're not going to reach the pinnacles and figure out all the answers to all the problems without talking a little bit about something good. and imagining something good, even if it's not stepping in cat puke.
Well, I think to kind of round that out from the conversation, what you all have just said too, is that as leaders, part of what we can do for people in as much as we can, because the environment is uncertain, is to create certainty in the areas that we can, to create stability, to remove that, operation from fear that you were talking about, and just to the and transparency, like to the extent that we can provide some of those things that are kind of physiologically calming for people to remove some of that fear and uncertainty. I think that's where we can really lean in this moment. So I want to thank you both so much for joining me today. I want to give you each a chance to tell people like where can they follow you, how can they find you, if there's anything you want to promote. Ryan May, I'll start with you.
I live on LinkedIn. That's kind of my main source of engagement. Really just promoting being better humans, being consistent. I dream of writing a book because all these cool people in my circle have done it. I don't know if that ADHD side of me is ever gonna allow that, but we'll keep that in there. And really just, yeah, checking in with me on LinkedIn. I do try and engage in podcasts. I do a lot of in-person events with a lot of the community groups. So come find me. Also, if you have questions, I was a baby HR person once too and didn't have all the answers. I still don't have all the answers, but I'll give it my best shot.
Love that. Kat?
Yeah, so the book I was referencing is called The Bounce Back Factor, and you can find it at thebouncebackfactorbook.com. And then I also write every week. So my one of the joys of my life is that I get to nerd out on research and write about it. And so every Tuesday I publish something that I'm thinking of writing over at 3earsmedia.com.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me.